Good afternoon. This is Media Center, Ukraine, Odesa. We are starting our next briefing. Our current speaker is Volodymyr Kudrytskyi, chairman of the board of the national energy company Ukrenergo. Volodymyr, what is the aim of your visit to the city of Odesa and the Odesa region? My main aim is the preparation to the heating season. This is the main task not only for our company but for other energy company in Ukraine. In summer, we try to visit all regions where we are present and to discuss with our colleagues how we prepare to winter and how we can respond to possible emergency situation. We are getting ready to difficult scenarios and how to provide power supply to the population in every region, taking into consideration the specifics of the region. And Odesa Oblast is among the regions who have been mostly affected by Russian attacks. That's why there is still a lot of work to do here, including restoration of the energy facilities, protection thereof, and the winterization of these facilities. And recently we have been witnessing short outage for 10-15 minutes, and there is unofficial information and messages that this is related to the equipment of your company. Can you explain this? Yes, partially these outages are connected to emergency situations with the main lines, but that was easily rectified. It took us like around 30 minutes in these cases. That was because of the state of the equipment, and also that was the new factor for our audience. These are birds that sometimes can also interfere with the main and supporting power supply lines. But such problems can be quickly settled, and they are not related to the global challenges in the region. So this is not related to quotas of power supply. No. When it comes to quotas, this is about the general deficit in the energy system all over Ukraine. And there is no deficit at the moment. We're able to cover all needs with the energy produced in Ukraine and also with energy imported from other countries. The situation is quite difficult, although it's summer, but we do not expect any outages because of the lack of energy supply. Last autumn, last winter, in Ukraine and in Odesa in particularly, we saw massive outages because of Russia's attacks on energy infrastructure. Do you expect such scenarios for this winter, and what have been done to prevent such scenarios? This is our work, to be prepared to the worst, and also to do everything possible in a given situation. There are several elements of our preparation to mitigate these risks. The first is restoration and repairs on the damaged facilities, which are important for sustainable power supply. These are substations of Ukrenergo, power supply stations using nuclear power, coal, hydropower stations that should be prepared to produce as much energy as possible. The second element is protection. Here we speak about engineering constructions. We cannot share details here, but our aim is to prepare energy facilities to minimize possible risks as a result of drones and missile attacks. The third element is the economical element, and here we call for Ukrainians, for our population, to save as many energy as possible, to make it easier for us to restore power supply systems. And one more element, this is our air defense units, allowing us to work in winter, and we can compare the percentage of the strikes, and we can see that the situation has improved thanks to our air defense units, and this allows us to restore the energy facilities quicker than the enemy ruins them. And about missile attacks and the percentage of strikes, can we say that everything was restored, everything that was damaged last year? And we cannot restore to 100% all facilities. This is physically impossible, because these damages and losses are massive. We cannot restore everything for 8-10 months, since those massive missile attacks stopped. That's why we should wisely use the financial and material resources to repair as many facilities as possible. This comes to generation of power supply and the main line, which is managed by Ukrenergo. Do we have any questions from the floor? Please don't forget to introduce yourself, and don't forget to use the microphone. Thank you. Turn it on, please. Mr. Kudrytskyi, during last press conference in Kharkiv, you said that you expected for the improving of the situation in March, August. What do you use for that? And this is the question also about debts, and we hope that the debt of the population will not increase, and this will allow the companies of the energy sector to have the financial resources they need for repairs and reconstruction, which is needed. I'd like to emphasize that Ukrenergo has also access to external financial resources. These are grants and donor support, up to $5 billion US dollars that were involved in the beginning of the full-scale invasion. For other companies, of course, their main source of funds is their revenue for the services provided, or for the dissemination allocation services as Volodymyr. And taken into consideration of the decisions of regulator and the government last month, we expect the improving of the financial situation in the market. There was the latest loan of 240 million. What stage are you now? We have signed the agreement, and now we are preparing the tender to procure equipment and special equipment for Ukrenergo in the framework of this grant. So I would like to emphasize this. This is a grant. This is a gift for us to better restore our energy system. I have a question from a journalist watching us online, Olga Chaika, Forbes, Ukraine. Is Ukrenergo is ready for the heating system, and is it important? I cannot comment upon the readiness of my colleagues. This would be wrong, but I could comment the importance of Ukrenergo. Ukrenergo is a very important company for winterization, and we rely a lot upon the energy blocks managed by Ukrenergo, and they are also included in our plan for the next heating season. This will be a significant player at the energy market and a very important power producer, and I believe that the role of Ukrenergo, as well as the role of other big energy producers, will be critical for the next heating season. And we have one more question about Центренерго. Igor Moskalevich, Дзеркало тижня. Out of 16 blocks of Центренерго, only 3 are operative and only 1 uses coal. How you can assess the readiness of Центренерго for winter? I'd like to repeat myself. I cannot comment upon the readiness of my colleagues. It is better to ask directly the company Центренерго. And I cannot comment upon the blocks which are operative at the moment. This is sensitive information. We cannot inform us about this to prevent the enemy to have information about the state of our system.
In a very general way, over the past year, there has been significant damage done to Ukraine's energy grid and infrastructure, and there have also been significant repairs. Compared to where the energy grid was last year, is it now more resilient, less resilient? Speaking generally in percentage terms, how much more resilient or how much less resilient?
Відповідати англійською можна?
Should I answer in English or Ukrainian? I can do this in Ukrainian. This is just a general assessment, a preliminary assessment about the reconstruction of the grid. And I cannot speak about generation. I can speak about the facilities of Ukrenergo. According to our assessment, around 78% has been, this is the capacity of the grid at the moment, comparing to what we had last year, and we continue increasing the capacity. We have a question from a journalist watching us online. This is the question about the plans to cooperate with the Turkish company to generate power on board of the vessels and to supply it to the south of Ukraine. Do you still consider this possibility? In this initiative, Ukrenergo is the company that last year helped to find a technical solution to connect such floating power supply station to our grid. And over the short period of time, during for 2-3 weeks, we were able to develop a technical solution to how to use energy produced by such floating station when it comes to connecting it to power supply lines. So the technical solution is there. We have provided it. Now is the question, who could be an operator of such possible floating station if it's connected to our grid? And who will generate this power? Ukrenergo, according to our law and according to the European rules, cannot do this because we're not operators. But several months ago, we prepared everything that was needed. I have one more question from a journalist. There is the message that the UN plans to implement the energy project amounting to $50 million close to the winter to ensure power supply to municipal services and the whole station in general, at least to install the turbine transformation at 80 watts. Can you share more details, taken into consideration that it's not about watts but megawatts? Yes, perhaps that was a misprint in the question. I can say now that for all regions and for the energy system in general, we can not speak about some insignificant power, because by the next winter we should accumulate everything and to connect as many new generators as possible to be safe for the next heating season. 8 megawatts for Odesa region could be a significant support to ensure sustainable power supply in the region. I do not know the details of that project, if it's really about 80 megawatts, because I've heard some smaller numbers, but in any case, additional sources of to generate power supply for winter is always a good idea. If the UN has such possibilities, if it is able to quickly finance and the purchase and installment of such facilities, in particular in Odesa region, that would be great for the energy system in general and for the consumers in Odesa region in particular. Last winter, there was the question to the energy supply of critical infrastructure, for example, for a pump station at Dnistro River. Can we now say that the critical infrastructure is to 100% supported of the independent power supply facilities like generators in case we have blackouts again? When it comes to supplying energy to the whole system by autonomous facilities, then it is impossible because of capacity of some of the facilities, and it is impossible to find the generators for them because some of them consume 10, 15, 20 megawatts, and such generators are inexistent. And if they can produce this level of capacity, then this is a power station. But there are some smaller facilities with less consumption. I cannot share the percentage because this is again sensitive information. But we can see that a significant percentage in Odesa region and in other regions that we have visited over the last 2-3 weeks. You have the reserve power supply systems and sources, and during such missions as now in the Odesa region, we meet with the representatives of regional military administrations and the representatives of the relevant institutions. We discuss such autonomous power supply sources. You remember that we faced such challenges when one house was all the time with the power supply and others were disconnected, and that was due to the fact that the facilities of critical infrastructure were on the same line with non-critical facilities. And we're still talking about automation of the critical infrastructure to make all ordinary consumers equal when it comes to outages. And thus we will get additional power to improve the situation for everyone. We are getting ready to different scenarios, and also as well as we are getting ready to post new possible massive attacks. And the generators are important resilience element for all regions. You've mentioned operators like Volodymyr. Can you tell us what work has been done with the suppliers of energy who are usually have monopoly in different regions? At least we have such in Odesa region. Have you defined the areas of responsibilities of your company and operators? Are they ready to force majeure situations in the winter? First of all, I'd like to say that the role of the generator and supplier is different. These are different legal persons. Every facility connected to the energy system, this could be Ukrenergo, Volodymyr, they just provide energy for the general pool. This is the Ukrainian energy system that supplies power to consumers. That's why there is no such notion as a regional monopoly, because Odesa gets energy from the general grid. But in any region, we have power supply stations that are able to produce power, and they can also be used for different emergency situations. Every operator of critical infrastructure, Ukrenergo, Volodymyr, producers of power, suppliers of power, and the operators of other types of critical infrastructure facilities have clear protocols to respond to emergency situations. Everybody has got unique experience from the previous winter. No other country in the world has such experience how to deal with such emergency situations caused by missile attacks. Now we are updating these response protocols. We are updating instructions for all of us to bring these documents in line with the current condition of the energy system and to be even more ready to possible challenges of the next winter. So the work is ongoing, and I think that by the end of summer, we will finalize the organizational part of this work. And a traditional question about tariffs. Do you expect that they could be raised for population, for business? Yes, we do not establish tariffs either for the population or for the business. We know that there were official comments of different officials about the fact that no changes of tariffs are expected for the population. As for tariffs for business, for the businesses, they're non-existent. There is the price at the market that changes every minute, and it is very dynamic. And it started in the mid of 1920 when the energy market was introduced in Ukraine. And I can speak about my expectations about the price in the wholesale market. And of course, we understand that there are seasons as the gas market, and the energy is not that expensive in summer as in the winter, because there is the question of deficit again. And I do not expect any price shocks when it comes to the wholesale market. And I think that the price will be rather sustainable and will be in its usual limits. And of course, we should take into consideration that the regulator has changed the threshold for prices a bit. And the increased thresholds will allow Ukrainian energy system to import energy from Europe. And it will be an important factor of our energy security the next winter. Without imported energy, it will be very difficult for us. And I think that both European and Ukrainian prices, because we have for more than 1 year common energy system, they will be changed, and the prices on Ukraine will depend on the transparent market in Europe. If there are no more questions, we will stop here. Thank you very much for being with us today, and hopefully we will see you here again. This was the last briefing in our center for today and for this week. Please stay tuned and follow our announcements.